So then I turn 65 and I retire and I take Social Security checks that I've been paying into. Let's see what's going on with that. Wait, why is that being taxed? Oh, they're taxing it on both ends. Your dollar is just, it's just taxed and taxed and taxed, but that's not even the issue that we're talking about here.
What should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. What the relationships are don't frankly matter.
And then they go and they tax you in like this secret way that they're not telling you about, where they just basically devalue the amount of money that you already have. It's like you know, the movie, they're drinking your milkshake. Like it's called drainage, Eli. The amount of money that you had is now worth less.
Fair to say you simply flooded the system with money?
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we, as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally, and we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government guaranteed securities, and that actually increases the money supply. We also print actual currency, and we distribute that through the Federal Reserve banks.
Well, that's how we're going to find out about it. All right. This is like a classic troubleshooting tactic. Like if you've ever worked in a job where you have to solve a problem, you start turning stuff off, right? Like I want to find out what this does. Like why is this important? Where does this fit into the system? Well, let me just turn it off and see what breaks, right? Like you do that in troubleshooting. So we're going to do that with the federal government. We're going to turn something off. And if it actually breaks something important, okay, we turn it back on. But we now know what this does. We're gaining information.
So what they do is they go on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, etc., the Skinner boxes of the world, and they say to other people, you need to do what's right. You need to be like vegan. You need to support animal rights. You need to this, that, and the other. And what that is that's them saying, I feel bad that I'm not doing this, so let me first start by telling everyone else to be a vegan, right?
These are the narratives. That's the narrative that you shouldn't have access to Social Security. The other narrative is that starving people are going to die and women are going to be pregnant and not have nutrients for their babies. And that's all you're hearing. And
yeah, well, that's the only thing they can say, but they can't point to the line item. They can't say like, well, this is the thing where nutrients for pregnant mothers were stopped. They can't point to that because we didn't.
Right.
There's a lie.
It's a black pill.
I am on board with you on that. It is a black pill, and I am going to take this as an opportunity to go on a small rant about money a little bit here, because a lot of you are thinking, hey, why does this matter to me, right? And that's a good question. A lot of this stuff doesn't matter, like, to anybody, because it's all just fake. It's all basically, this is the whole point of Doge, which we're going to get into later, is that these government, they're actually just fake people. They're not real people.
Right.
They're not running anything, in my mind. They don't actually do anything. They are the gorillas in suits kind of archetype, right? Yeah. And why that's related to this is that, okay, this does affect you in a lot of ways. People hear that number, and I'll tell you, Thomas Massey said on an interview recently, hey, the CR is just going to, if they're accurate predictions of 2.5% of GDP per year for the next 10 years, if it's that, he says rosy kind of, basically those are optimal predictions. He's saying, assume those are true, then we're still looking at a $20 trillion increase to the national debt over 10 years, right? And so but he thinks it's going to double over 10 years. Mm-hmm. And okay, so you ask, what does it matter? 56 trillion, 36 trillion, who cares? It's all trillions of dollars that no one has. How are we? Right. Why does that matter? Well, here's why it matters. When you are paid from, let's say you work at Walmart and you're paid, you're told that you're paid $20 an hour, right? But you look at your paycheck, you do the math. Okay, I worked 40 hours this week. I'm told I'm supposed to be paid $20 an hour. So what is that? So is that supposed to be, where's my check? Is it supposed to be $800 or is it, what's going on here? And then you say, okay, hold on. Oh, some of it goes to the federal government because it's income tax. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I'm taking like $680. Oh, some of it's going to Social Security. Okay, so I'm at six. Okay, some of it goes here and there and that and the other. Okay, so now I'm down to like, 70% of what I was supposed to be paid. Okay, that's not. I don't really like that. That's fine, but I'll take that money. So that's been taxed. So now I've got that money. I've got my money. I'm gonna go buy. Let me go buy a TV. So I buy a TV and then wait a minute. It says the price tag says $100. Why am I paying $108? Oh, that's sales tax. Oh, so the tax, but the money that I got was already taxed because it's money that I earned that was originally at $20 an hour, but then it was taxed once, right? So now it's being taxed twice. Okay, so fine, that's okay. So they're taxing that more, and then let's say I want to sell this TV to somebody. I'm supposed to report that, right?
Right.
As income. If I sell the TV for $150, because I bought it for 100. I'm supposed to report that $50 as income. So then hold on, does that get added to the income? So how much does that go? This, that, and the other. Okay, let me invest some of my money real quick that I made because I do have a little bit left. So let me put some of that into the S&P. And then I've got capital gains. So let's see, how do I calculate that into the equation? Okay, that's fine. So then I turn 65 and I retire and I take Social Security checks that I've been paying into. Let's see what's going on with that. Wait, why is that being taxed? Oh, they're taxing it on both ends. So you see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
And it's you have your dollar is just it's just taxed and taxed and taxed, but that's not even the issue that we're talking about here. So this $1 trillion national debt, $56 trillion speculated national debt, does not mean this is another form of tax. This is basically saying kind of what we said a couple episodes ago. If you have 20 grand in your bank right now today, and then you go down 20 years from now and you just have it as 20 grand, it's not going to be worth the same purchasing power as it was today, right? In 20 years, it's not going to be worth a lot less. You're not going to be able to buy a car for 20 grand. Like, I don't even think you can today. When I was graduating high school, you could buy a Toyota Corolla brand new, like the newest, they always call it the 2011 version, even though it's 2009 or whatever.
Right.
Just like, that whole thing was 20K, basically. I knew that was my number. I was like, okay, if I want a brand new Corolla, it's 20K. Okay? Right. So that's kind of what I knew. Right now, it's probably in the 30s, I think. I actually don't know. I think it's in the 30 to 35 range.
Yeah, I think so.
But that's what inflation is, and that's because of things like deficit spending and because we're in such a high debt and because of the printing, the endless printing of money.
Right.
And so, yeah, you have all this stuff. We're already taxing money. We're already taxing your money 9 times, and then we're inflating the money so that your money is being taxed in a different way. Right. So, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that causes revolutions. I'm not advocating for that, but this is what it causes. That's what happens, right? So it's like a famous quote.
Just to file that point a little bit, because Tony that's a great lesson Tony just gave you. And just one thing I want you to understand too is this. So the deficit and the debt, obviously two different things. The deficit refers to how much money per fiscal year that we're incurring towards the debt. So the debt is like the total number, but the deficit is how short we are every single year on actually meeting our obligations. So why does that lead to debt? So if we have a budget and we end up with a $2 trillion deficit, so we did not bring in enough tax revenue to cover our obligations, right, as a country, how do we make up for that? Well, we either print money, right, which happens, or we borrow money from other countries. So in either case, that's literally another tax, but it's a tax that that doesn't need to go into the budget, right? So the budget accounts for some certain amount of tax revenue that they're going to bring in, and they say, oh, that's your tax rate. Look, we're taxing you this percent. It's right here in the budget. Right here in the budget, we're taxing you this amount. And then you say to them, okay, sure, except this doesn't actually cover all the money you're going to owe. So where's that going to come from? Oh, don't worry about that. We'll handle that. You just close your eyes and cover your ears and don't worry about all that. And then they go and they tax you in like this secret way that they're not telling you about, where they just basically devalue the amount of money that you already have. So it's like the movie, they're drinking your milkshake, right? Like it's called drainage, Eli, right? The amount of money that you had is now worth less, but unbeknownst to you, nobody voted on that. Nobody decided to do that except the people who are in power.
Right.
And so anyway, I just want to point that out, that you're being taxed without knowing it. And so this is why this is so important. Everything Tony explained, and then the thing I just added, this is why the deficit and the budget matters a lot. Okay, these are ridiculous numbers. They're crazy numbers that they must seem like they're made up. They're pulled out of thin air, and they're so big that I think people lose perspective on it. That it just sort of becomes like, what even does that mean at this point? What, we're dealing with $30 trillion? Like, what could that possibly mean to anybody? That's just a fake number, right? Well, in a way, yes. In a way, yeah, it is fake. You do have to care about it because it's you're being robbed. You're being robbed behind your back. So that's why. No,
it's like Joe Schmo says, well, I don't care about the national debt. What does that mean to me? Well, it does matter to you, Joe Schmo. Yes. It does matter because every dollar that you buy your gold or your Bitcoin or whatever, I guess you could buy some Bitcoin, but every dollar you put into gold or whatever, it's no longer backed by, the dollar's not backed by gold anymore, dude. Joe Schmo, rather, not Joe Biden, but Joe Schmo, your dollar is not backed and secured. Yeah. It's backed and secured by fiat, by faith, right? So it's like, very well put with the deficit versus the debt, kind of the distinction there, right? So that's good. It's good stuff there. And I think it's really a good question because people do ask, why does this doesn't really affect me, right? Right. And I encourage you to go to Cold Fusion's YouTube channel and search where does money come from, and we'll drop a link underneath the subscribe button. We'll drop a link for that. But that's a good video, and he overlays kind of what Dean and I just talked about, and it does a little deep dive on it. I think he's one of those really informative kind of channels, so check that out. But it's really a big deal, and I think there is a quote from, I believe it was Henry Ford, I think at the time, saying that if every citizen woke up today and it was explained exactly how money works and how it comes from, there would be a revolution by noon. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's kind of a ridiculous thing where, I mean, why is everything taxed 30 or 40 times, right?
Yeah.
Is that because we need money to pay for the roads, or is it because the clowns that are in charge are fucking the budget up? Right? Pardon my French, but it's like we have this, and I'm going to use more French here. We can just redact it, but this kind of cocksuckery that's going on, if you will, to Trump. It's like, oh, I need to vote everything yes on what he says because Orange Man is God, basically, right? And it's like, you need to be like more like Massey, right? I think you need to stand up.
Massey's the one guy who gives a shit about everything we just explained, right? That the fact that you're being robbed behind your back, that you're paying taxes that are fake, and then you're being robbed secretly. They're draining your account without you even knowing. And Massey's the one guy who's like, hey, we should stop doing that. Maybe we should try. Maybe we should let people keep their own money. Like they're going out and working. Maybe they have a right to maybe hold on to some of that. I don't know. Thomas Massey, crazy guy. Let's primary him for that crap. So,
conspiracy theorist.
Exactly. What a fucking lunatic.
Yeah, no, it really grinds my gears. But that's probably the worst offender of like everything else is whatever. But like that's the worst offender in my mind of. I guess actually no. The next thing we're about to talk about is another big disappointment.
Elon and Doge.
We can talk about Doge. Yeah, we can talk about Doge. And I love that it's called Doge because he initially wanted to call it something else. He wanted to call it government efficiency or government. He wanted to call it something else, but then people on Twitter said you got to call it Doge,
Yeah,
And he did his little Doge pump and dump like a couple of years ago, so it's interesting. But I mean, with Doge, I mean, we all know, everyone knows what Doge is right now. It's just Department of Government Efficiency, and Elon's coming in and he's being, I guess, tasked by Trump to, hey, let's find inefficiencies and get rid of them. Basically, that's the one sentence thing of what it's supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
And so what has been done so far, right? What's been done so far with Doge, and I mean, before we jump into what's been done so far with it, I'm just going to talk about kind of the narrative that I know a little bit about it. Is that even before, because I've got a couple acquaintances in my life that have a term I like to call Elon derangement syndrome. Derangement syndrome, right? So it's like Trump derangement syndrome, but it's like they hate Elon for some reason, and it's interesting because I used to be kind of more of all the CEOs of all the big companies are evil, whatever. I don't care what your name is. If you're Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, you're equivalent, right? But now I can kind of parse the differences, and we already talked about Zuck, and he's already different in his own way. But for me, somebody like a Bill Gates type character, he has done so much evil in this world. I think it's almost unforgivable to a point where it's like, I can't even understand the man. Like, how do you even allow yourself to do those things? And I encourage you to do your own research, but I'm only going to talk about a little bit about what he does. It's just even the stuff with like, if you even talk about from a Microsoft perspective, genius business tactics, but when you bury Netscape browser with the way you did it, like that's a whole thing you did that's crazy to me. So just that alone. But anyway, my point is a lot of these billionaires are different people, right? So we got Elon Musk, who, and I'm going to say Elon Musk is somebody who I think is more of a benevolent dictator. Not dictator, sorry, a benevolent billionaire. And he's showing that by saying, hey, I'm going to try to save these people from the space station, right? I'm going to rescue those guys because I've got this ship that we've built from SpaceX and stuff. And, you bring that up and you got your Elon derangement syndrome folks who say, well, he only has 4 Tesla patents. He only has 4 patents. And one of them is for the Model X, and it has nothing to do with SpaceX. Right? He said 4 patents. And so they've got their talking points, and they just are really, really hate this Elon Musk guy. Because he went from left to right, and I actually don't know. There's no because. I'm not even going to try to explain it. They just hate the guy. So everything he says is bad. And so that, therefore, they are all saying, he's not qualified to be interfering in our government bloat. He shouldn't be trying to trim the fat of the government because he's not qualified. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you want the government to not be so bloated?
Yes.
The answer is yes, right? Always. Mm-hmm. Do you want somebody to fix that? Yes. Well, why can't Elon Musk do that? Because he's evil.
Nobody voted for him. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with that, kick it over to you, and kind of get what you think about just Elon in general, and then we can give details about Doge if you want to go into that as well.
So Doge is another one that I'm pretty much withholding judgment on Doge as of the moment. I support the initiative, obviously. I mean, everything you just said. We have government bloat. I'm firmly of the belief that the so-called fourth branch of government, which is the unelected bureaucracy, also known as the deep state, also known as the swamp, this needs to go. I mean, at the very least, it needs to be trimmed, and we need to find the inefficiencies, which I guarantee you are there. And I trust Elon Musk to do that. I mean, who is better for something like that, right? Just think about it from a rational, like, sort of look at the qualifications. All right, the guy, whatever you think about him, he is a billionaire. He's runs many successful companies in different kinds of industries. He's a guy who knows how to get things done and how to run an efficient business. And, people argue that the federal government is not supposed to be a business. All right. I mean, I get that, but there are aspects of it that are like a business. I mean, they have a budget, they have a certain amount of revenue, they have goals they need to achieve, right? These are very similar to just any kind of corporation. So why not Elon Musk? I mean, I think he's a perfectly suitable choice for this job to lead this effort. And I mean, if to make it more concrete, look at what he did with X, right? He bought X for some absurd amount of money, totally inflated, and he got in there and he like slashed the staff. He made a number of huge changes to just the budget and to make it more efficient. And X is now more profitable than they were when it was Twitter. They earn less revenue. This is what's interesting. They earn a lot less revenue because they've been targeted by advertisers or untargeted by advertisers, if you will. Advertisers refuse to use the platform anymore. So they're earning less revenue, but they're actually turning a higher profit simply because he's made it so much more efficient. And in my view, if somebody uses it a lot, I think the platform is a lot better these days. It's more open and there's freer speech. So, I've seen what he's done. I've seen the firsthand the effects of his ability to make things more efficient, and I trust him when it comes to Doge. Now, again, we're still in the early days of this, and this is obviously a massive, massive job. At the moment, apparently Doge only has about 100 people working there, and they plan to double that to about 200, which in my view is still a pretty small number. It's not a huge staff. They're going to eventually take on every single department in the government, and they're going to figure out where the inefficiencies are, what can we cut. And, they may be, here's the thing, a lot of criticisms I hear about Doge so far is that they're like haphazard. They're kind of just going in with a machete and just slicing stuff off here and there. I'm fully in support of that. I don't have any problem with that at all.
That's not even true, by the way. It's a lot more surgical than that. But as you said, I'm fully in favor of that as well. I don't even.
Yeah, no, you made a great point. Like I'm sort of conceding that for the sake of argument, but you're right. It's really not even like that. But my view is like, even if it was, I'm fine with it, because here's the simple fact: if they end up cutting something that turns out to be important, well, that's how we're going to find out about it. All right, this is a classic troubleshooting tactic. Like, if you've ever worked in a job where you have to solve a problem, you start turning stuff off, right? Like, I want to find out what this does. Like, why is this important? Where does this fit into the system? Well, let me just turn it off and see what breaks, right? Like, you do that in troubleshooting. So we're going to do that with the federal government. We're going to turn something off. And if it actually breaks something important, okay, we turn it back on. But we now know what this does. We're gaining information, right? So if you take a hacksaw and you start chopping stuff up, I think that's actually a pretty efficient way, or a fast way to get to the bottom of what really needs to be kept and what can go. So I support the initiative. I'll wrap it up really quick. So there's not a whole lot to say about it. I mean, they've made some significant cuts, but obviously they've got a long ways to go. Elon wants to cut, according to this, but I think this is wrong. I think he wants to cut $1 trillion, is what I believe. I believe he thinks we can cut $1 trillion just from fraud, waste, and abuse. So this is not even
from the spending, from the yearly spending
deficit. Yes, from the deficit, he believes we can cut $1 trillion, which is half of what the deficit is. So that would be massive. It would be a huge improvement. But whether he'll get there or not, I don't know. But I'm withholding judgment. So that's where I stand on that now.
No, and I like you bring up Twitter as an example of something that he did. To me, Twitter was a $44 billion purchase of free speech, not a purchase of. He's not purchasing Twitter to say, hey, how do I increase my net worth? Let me buy Twitter. No, he did not say that, right? He said, "Hey, I need to put a stop to this censorship situation, so I'm going to pay $44 billion to donate. I'm donating to the cause of free speech, and it happens to be generating a little bit more profit nowadays than it was before. But it never was a profitable company. It was just it was never like a super profitable company, right? It's more like a platform and stuff. And he actually got that done, and in my mind, that's a donation, right? You could call that to the Republican Party, but that's more of to the Constitution, right? And if that's how much it costs to pay for free speech, like, hey, we'll get it done. I mean, that's why in my mind I said earlier benevolent. And it's not benevolent, but it's more benevolent than you got like the Bill Gates of the world, who's actively trying to suppress free speech and trying to, test vaccines on, Africans, etc. So we'll go into that later, but or not. I mean, you just do your own research, but it's just. This is what I'm saying. This is kind of evil stuff. It just makes my blood boil when I think about the kind of crap that Bill does. Bill Gates, that is. But so Elon Musk, and I think this is a good litmus test for you guys. Is if you think that if you know that something is a smear campaign and you agree and you're still in favor of even their smeared version of it, just like what Dean said. Hey, when I corrected him, I said, well, that's not even true. And he doesn't even care, right? Because he's okay with that version of it. So that means that their smear attempt isn't even going to work because you'd be okay with the radical version, the straw man of what's real, of what's going on, right? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So that means they're so off the mark when they're criticizing him that they don't even understand what what you want, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
well, that's a common. This is semi-unrelated, but I just want to bring this in. That is a common problem with liberals, actually. And this has been shown in like studies. Liberals and left-wingers actually are very often incapable of forming what's called a theory of mind for their opposition. So what you'll find is that the conservatives. So Tony and I would call myself conservative. I know what the liberals believe. I know everything about it. I know their foundation of their worldview. I know what policies they would support as a result of that. I know what policies they're going to push. I know what they're going to push against from my perspective. I know that. I don't even need to talk to them. I just know what it is. I mean, I would talk to them, but I'm just saying I can predict it. The reverse is actually untrue, and you'll find this out if you talk to a liberal. They don't know. It's not that they are in bad faith or they're just being argumentative. They genuinely can't explain to you what you believe. But the reverse. So it doesn't work both ways. But that's unrelated. But I just thought that I'd work that in because of
no, and that's a good point. If you ever have somebody that's debating you, and they just ask them to repeat back your argument, just say like, "Hey, repeat back what my argument is." And if they don't if they can't, which they can't do most of the time, if they can't repeat back to you what you're arguing, like, there's no point to continue the conversation because they're not in good faith.